Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much for being here today. This event that we are having right now, it's part of a traveling project of the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation, together with the Spanish Council for Scientific Research, CSIC, Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, that have launched a series of debates called Encuentro Cajal within the framework of the Año Cajal, which is a tribute to the great scientist and doctor Santiago Ramón y Cajal, who was the first Nobel Prize of Spain in 1906. We have this Cajal debates are around neuroscience, neurorights, and artificial intelligence this year. And we have already organized a debate, one Encuentro Cajal, last November 7th at the UCD on neuroinflammation, which was a very interesting event. The one today will be not less interesting to address one of the greatest challenges and opportunities that is facing science today, which is not, as we will learn, I hope today, without ethical risk for democracy as well and education. I hope you will find it very interesting, and I'm sure about that. And I would like to thank, before passing the floor to Fernando BARTOLOMÉ, Counselor of Education for Education of the Embassy, who is presenting and moderating the debate. Thank you very much, Fernando. I would like to thank all of you and all the participants today, Daniel SARASA, Noelle DOODY, John Durkin, Inmaculada ARNEDILLO-SÁNCHEZ, Professor at Trinity College. Thank you very much for receiving and for co-organizing this event today at Trinity College. And a special thanks to Professor Daniel Inenariti, who has made a great effort, I can assure you, to be here today in Dublin. And I'm sure that you will enjoy all of them. Thank you very much. Fernando, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Christian. And first of all, thank you all for coming to this Cajal encounter organized by the Embassy of Spain in Ireland. Well, first, prior to present our great set of panelists we have today, I just would like to point why it makes sense to organize a Cajal encounter on artificial intelligence. Cajal is usually remembered as our greatest scientist, our Nobel Prize. Is not only an example, but also kind of an exception, unfortunately. But he's remembered for being the first to assure scientifically that neuron is an isolated unit. He did that, but not only that. He also proposed that the functioning of a neuron depends on that if the input of the neuron goes below a certain threshold, then the neuron does nothing. Only if the input goes above a threshold, then the neuron fires a signal, an electric signal, which passes to neurons beyond, along the nerve, along the neuron system, the nervous system. And that functioning is indeed very similar to what has been thought by two great physicists in last century, John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton, thought about code, an informatic program, which was organized by units that, depending on the input, above or below a threshold, passed to the next layer a signal which was proportional to the input somehow, or just stay silent as the neuron does. So by this bio-inspired structure within a program, within a computer, this they gave birth to neural networks, which is, as we call it, since the 60s last century. And they really started to grow in the 80s and 90s and so on and so on. But that structure of a neural network within a code was really, really pioneering, and it's at the center of today's revolution of AI. As we have been mentioning today, is everything nowadays is AI for something, AI on everything. So that's why we thought it would be very interesting to talk about AI within this Cajal Encounter framework, and we proposed to talk about AI in education, AI in democracy, which I think we all could agree that are very well interrelated and very deeply related. To do so, we have a very brilliant set of panelists. To my left, Inmaculada ARNEDILLO-SÁNCHEZ. Is this order? Okay. She's associated professor at the School of Computer Science here in Trinity College Dublin, and I take the opportunity to thank you for helping us so much with selecting the venue, allowing us to have this meeting today here. Thank you very much, Inmaculada. It has been great. She's a researcher active in knowledge and data on the engineering group, and she has been working for a long time in technology for learning, technology for education. So she's a member of the committee on the International Association for Mobile Learning, and UNICEF's advisor, and early career. She was an early career provost teaching award of this university, Trinity College Dublin. Then we have more to my left, John Dorcan. He's a chief technologist, and he's working at the technology division of IDA Ireland, and he will explain us what is his role there in this very important, I would say, very successful organization within Ireland today. He is a specialist in data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. And it's interesting that he has been very active studying early response in emergencies, which in fact being this one, this event organized by the Spanish Embassy, I have to say that this is touching us very directly nowadays, as we all may recognize how important is early answer in emergencies, isn't it? To his left, Professor Daniel Inerarity. He's Professor of Political and Social Philosophy and Iker Basque Professor at the University of the Basque Country, and also Director of the Institute for Democratic Governance in San Sebastian, and Chair of AI and Democracy at the School of Transnational Governance of the European University Institute in Florence. He has received a number of prizes in essay and literature. I would say that from the three governments more important for him, the Navarre government, the Basque government and also the Spanish one. So, congrats. And he's author of a long list of books. The last one in English is a Theory of Complex Democracy that was published by Bloomsbury, I think, in 2023. So you're almost as popular and as famous as Harry Potter. You have the same editor. Good. To his left, we had the pleasure to receive Noelle DOODY, that is Managing Director at Accenture Ireland. She has been there for 3 years. Previously, was working at SSE, Electricity, so as a head of analytics. And previously, she was a longer time in Accenture in many managing and directing positions in that company. And previously, you had worked also at Procter & Gamble. Yeah. So you were also, you studied here, master in Dublin. I mean, in University College Dublin. Yeah, and mechanical engineering, University College Dublin, and okay, yeah, we are really looking forward what somebody coming from not the academia but the enterprise and the real world of has to tell us about AI, really. And fully to the left, we have got Daniel SARASA. Dr. SARASA is director of the Zaragoza City of Knowledge Foundation. He has been working in urban architectural projects, and he's one of the designers of the Zaragoza Digital Agenda, who has been the agenda, the long-term agenda for our city's digital development. And he has been also author of several books. I would like to mention especially Ciudad Abierta, Ciudad Digital in 2021 with José Carlos Arnal, which is not translated to English. So we have to work on that, Daniel.
Bloomsbury.
Yeah.
No less.
It should be, yeah.
AI.
That helps, maybe. And he has been for many years responsible of what has been the most innovative action in bringing together technology, arts, and innovation in Zaragoza. So, to start, I would like to give you some minutes to talk about your personal position from very different perspectives from your vantage point, I would say, about AI and education and society and democracy. So let's start, maybe Daniel, linearity, would you like to start?
Okay.
You have to use that one too.
Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. My focus on artificial intelligence is about the relationship between artificial intelligence, digital environment, and democracy and politics in general. I don't like to talk about the impact of the artificial intelligence on politics, because this word impact suggests that as if it were something coming from the outside, modifying our landscape, and had nothing to do with the way we are dealing with these technologies. What is the source of our problems? If we are able to regulate, to handle this complex ecosystem between technology and society and democracy, political decision making, etc. Instead of talking about impact, I prefer to talk about relationship. Well, and I propose you, I have 10 minutes only to tell you a short story or a thought experiment. Allow me to adopt a rather populist tone in this moment to start by saying that we all agree, I imagine, that we have a problem with politics. The problem with politics is that we citizens are not able to manage all the amount of information we have. We need to make our decisions when voting next week, for example, to know all the candidates, all the political programs. But at the same time, politicians really don't know what we actually prefer, like, or are interested in. This is a bit populist, a bit simplistic, especially when for a person who has written a book about complex democracy. But allow me to simplify a little bit the things in order to explain the following things. Well, imagine we have this problem of knowledge of society at large, and imagine we have at our disposal a device, a big device, able to identify our preferences, our interests, and updating all the time these preferences and interests, and in a second moment to aggregate all these preferences and make the corresponding decision. This would be, in a nutshell, this would be data instead of voting. Voting has no sense because politicians don't respect what we have voted. At the same time, we can vote together for one thing, but tomorrow change our mind. And this device would be able to register, to monitoring, to update our interests and preferences. In a second moment, this device would be able to aggregate all these diverse preferences and interests and find a balance between all them and make a correct decision. What do you think about this device I have just invented? It's a good idea, instead to having democracy as we know it, to have this system. Aren't you enthusiastic about it? No, not especially. I go.
I think we are seeing examples. We are seeing the politicians do not respect the Constitution.
Okay. I agree with you. This is not a good idea. And this is not a good idea because two big reasons. The first one, the identification of our interests. The technological system, the digital systems identify our preferences and future preferences according to the bias that the future preferences are in continuity with our past preferences. That is normally that is so. We humans are very conservative. We make today almost the same thing as yesterday, but in the human history, especially in a democracy, we have to leave open the future decisions to something unpredicted, something new. Hannah Arendt, the big philosopher, once said, what is characteristic for humans, our peculiarity is the natality, its ability to make something new, unpredicted. Well, this system of registration of our preferences and interests through the traces we leave in our consumption, in our mobility, in the social media is very conservative, because it takes for granted that the future behavior, the future interests and preferences will be in continuity with the past. But I asked you, do you think that a movement like the Me Too, that represents a rupture with the practices of the past, would have been possible in a digital in a digital world of continuity? No, probably there had been a moment of rupture with the past, and political intention to legislate in this direction, etc. There have been. We have to leave open certain decisions to the decision of the future. The second idea of why this identification is not a good identification is that we are not only consumers, we are also citizens, and that it means that we are not what we actually do, but also what we aspire to do, or to be, or to become. There is a distinction between the self and the aspirational self. If I ask you in this moment, please rate yourself according to the environmental commitment, or you would say, no, my commitment is 10, 9. If we examine your actual behavior regarding these environmental issues, probably you will have a 6 or a 7. But my question is, do you prefer to be governed by your actual self or by your aspirational self? Perhaps, maybe both. In which relationship? Well, I see the moderator examine my behavior in this moment, and I pass to my final conclusion. The second question is related to the aggregation. What is aggregation? The idea of aggregation is a simple balance between diverse interests coming from the economic theory. I have no time to explain this, but I consider that in front of this idea of aggregation, we have deliberation, and deliberation is something quite different than simple aggregation. The deliberation is about shaping a public space in which we have the possibility to examine the compatibility of our interests with those of others. I am not saying that we have to renounce to our aspirations or to our interests, only that in a democracy we must have the possibility and be open to a discussion with others, as a result of which we can change our mind or modify or make compatible what at the first glance seems not compatible. And finally, in a certain moment of the political process, we have to anticipate what could be the final outcome, the result of a process of aggregation or deliberation. What is your final idea of society is something that we have in a democracy to, in a certain way, to anticipate. And the simple aggregation could be stupid. We have many examples. Perhaps the climate change is the most relevant, the most telling, that the simple aggregation of our interest at the end of the day could lead to irrational outcome. How can we? This is what politics is about. How can we anticipate somehow, with uncertainty, the possible final result of the aggregation compatibility of different interests in a society? This is a core value of the politics in a democracy. Sorry for, no, I don't know.
No, you have been very
Yes.
to the point.
Thank you.
Very obedient. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noelle, so from your perspective, what's the idea? How do you see this relationship between AI and society and education, and what the enterprise is allowing the school or the society to get from this new tool we have?
Thank you. So just before I start to talk about some of those themes, just to give people a sense of Accenture as an organisation, some people may be familiar with it, but for people who aren't, it's a global organisation. In terms of size, we have over 700,000 employees. And we work in approximately 50 countries with about 9,000 clients. So our clients range from health and public sector organisations, where we're working with a lot of governments. And we also do work in life sciences, in financial services, software and platforms, utilities, and other industries. I think, as you mentioned, Fernando, at the start, I suppose AI for us and with our clients, both in public sector and non-public sector, it's not really something very new, because even locally there was an analytics innovation centre that was established in about 2010, of which I was a member, and we were actually focused on using data and analytics to apply to some kind of potential non-compliance and fraud and risk practices, again in a number of different industries. And I guess what we're seeing, and I think it's probably reflected across society, is the advent of the large language models and kind of tools like ChatGPT meant that this technology was much more accessible than ever before. So previously, to execute some of the machine learning programs, etc., you probably needed some quite specialist skills, whereas we're now seeing our clients, again across all sectors, are very interested in this because they're seeing it come into their everyday life and it's very accessible to people. In terms of education, if I just talk about education for a minute, we in Accenture have invested a lot in education. We've developed over 200 courses specifically for AI, and in particular generative AI, because we believe it's a branch of AI that has very specific, I guess, kind of opportunities and challenges. We believe our clients are actually looking at education in this area as well. A recent survey of our clients has shown that about 2/3 of clients, I think it was particularly in Europe, 2/3 have implemented an education program in their organisation. And I guess globally we have completed it's about over 1,000, again specifically generative AI projects over about the last year or so. And some of the things that we are learning is, from a society perspective, social perspective, is, if I think about the three things that kind of people really think about or ask me whenever they come in and talk about AI. First, people are very concerned about what does this mean for the people in my organisation. So people are really looking at, how does it impact people's roles and their tasks and what they're doing day to day. People are also very concerned about how do I do this safely. So with the advent of the EU AI Act, some people are looking at actually they may already have some advanced analytics in their organisation, so they're looking again to make sure that they're adhering to policy. And I'm working with one particular client who. They have a number of actually very successful generative AI pilots and proofs of concepts completed, but actually they're not going to implement those until they are comfortable that they have their own responsible AI framework established and operating to a standard that they're happy with. And until that time, they're not happy to actually scale that out across their organisation. So I think a lot of the organisations that I'm dealing with are being very But being very responsible and very, very cautious. Some of the other things that people consider, I guess, is around, I suppose, kind of where do I get the value? And I think a lot of people, when they talk about value, I think they immediately default to kind of cost reduction. But we're actually seeing a lot of cases where it's improving the outcome for people. So one example is an organisation I'm working with that is using it to actually improve their complaints process. So it's actually all about getting the complaint to the right person to get it solved faster. So and to make sure that the outcome for the customer is better. From a governmental perspective, we've worked with one European government or public service organisation to actually use language models to review communications from citizens and to identify urgent communications that need very fast attention and escalate those faster. So again, it's not about necessarily kind of cost reduction in those cases, it's actually about improving the service to either the customer or in some cases the citizen. And I guess, just in terms of the other things people consider, I mean, people consider also the kind of the technical foundations. I'm sure, John, you've probably seen that. So the partnerships with some of the kind of the organisations become very, very important in that case. And then I think finally the other thing that people are finding is that because this technology is evolving so quickly, people are just, both from a technical and I suppose kind of both an organisation perspective, they're just getting ready to be very flexible and to change and adapt as the technology evolves as well. So they're just some of the themes that we're seeing in some of the projects that we've completed.
Thank you very much, Noelle. It's great to have also this view from an enterprise like Accenture Ireland, with so many facets of this technology applied to the service to your clients. Thank you very much. John Duncan is, as I told, Chief Technologist in IDA. Please tell us about your work there, how artificial intelligence is helping you or helping Ireland to have this great success on being an attractive place for enterprises to invest.
Sure, no problem at all. Excuse me. So yes, indeed. So I'm Chief Technologist in the Tech Division for IDA Ireland. And for anybody who doesn't know, IDA Ireland is the foreign direct investment agency that attracts all the multinationals into Ireland. And maybe some of you are working with some of those multinationals or hoping to work with some of those multinationals in the future. And my role is very much working with companies, exploring research and development opportunities, and for them to build out the research and development teams here in Ireland. So as some of the CTOs say to me, said I've got probably one of the best jobs in the world because I get to see all the advanced tech before it comes out. I get to see what everybody's working on across all sectors within that. And so within my role at the moment, for example, I look after, I suppose, 4 key areas, and they're all kind of interrelated. So semiconductors, so that's the chips that's going to be running your AI. I then look at cybersecurity, which is obviously about securing AI, which is very important. Generative AI, which my own background is in the world of AI, which is interesting. And then also really exciting areas in the world of quantum software. And the infusion of quantum and AI and where that comes down the road is really exciting. Now, I will admit on the latter one, I know very little about this at all. And that's one but it's a fascinating opportunity for where it's coming. And we're starting to see, I suppose, some early interactions on that side of it. One of the big things that we see now with AI, and particularly across the multinational sector, is it's not just in the tech sector. So like, yes, your Meta, your Google, like Salesforce, they all are using it and embedding it, and it's coming into their product offerings. And OpenAI have recently come into Ireland, for example, and Anthropic as well. So one of the big things that IDA tries to do is we look at what trends are out there and what are some of the key attractors to bringing companies into Ireland within that. And yes, tax has been one part of that has been their part of it. But actually one of the biggest things things that has really come out over the last thing has been about skills, and particularly to diversity of skills. And this is something that actually 2 or 3 companies have found, and it's really interesting that in Ireland now you can walk into a company and there's 40 or 60 different nationalities working in a company. Now, when I was growing up in Dublin in the late 90s, early 2000s, like, that was not really there much at all. So it's radically changed. But when you start developing AI systems, that diversity is a really important aspect and an advantage to companies, because as was mentioned there earlier on, bias is in a lot of things. And where you have a kind of a monoculture culture, and particularly a white male Western culture that the data is around a lot of it on, even in healthcare, unfortunately, that tends to give, I suppose, one direction for AI systems. But where you've got diversity in companies, people pick up those biases in their day-to-day operations, either through testing or what's there. So you end up with better products that come out of it. And actually one company who does HR software, they actually had that exact example. They had a piece of software, they thought it was really good, they were getting close to launch. They just tested it among the staff, and there was loads of diversity that was there. They had 18 different nationalities, and it picked up loads of biases that they just completely had no idea was there. So that allowed them to get to refine the product, put it together, and then they went out to the market with a much better product that was there. So I think that's something too that in Ireland we're very much encouraging, is this idea of diversity, skills and training. One of the big pieces we see is there's a lot of collaboration with the university sectors, and that is a huge part that's come into it. And we encourage companies through recruitment and having graduates and that to take part in the programs that's there. And also a big part that has really changed recently with multinationals in particular has been a big focus on looking at collaboration across Europe. So I suppose before, what we would have seen, and particularly American companies would have come in, they'd have done their piece of work, they would have done it in country, and that would have been in Germany or in Ireland or wherever. But now, because of AI and just the complexity and the scale and the costs are huge. I mean, we see estimates from ChatGPT, and we've had like Sam talk about $1 trillion is going to be need to invest it over the next number of years. So like scale is just at a different level of where we're going. So collaboration across Europe has been really important, and we're seeing that now with collaborative projects from the European side through Horizon Europe and different aspects like that. And I think that's again is a really positive direction where it's going, because those European projects have a big focus too on public knowledge, public sharing, along with the industry piece. And so there's an awful lot more opportunities for collaboration now as well. And to me, that's very positive, because as we moved on this journey between industry and AI, all of these components coming together will be very important. So, and I would encourage anybody to keep doing your AI in Ireland. It's a very exciting place to do it. There's loads of exciting companies there, and believe me, they're doing some really cool tech.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. So, Inmaculada, you have been teaching for a long time here at Trinity about technology and learning, and your research is really very, very deep and very innovative on those areas in many subjects. What is your feeling about? Okay, clearly technology has already influenced and shaped how we learn, how we study, how we teach, but what we can expect about AI? Is all good, or?
Okay, so that's not an easy question, right? Indeed, it's a very difficult question. So I suppose that I have a very particular take on technology and learning, right? And I normally like to talk about learning rather than education, because this is a philosophical debate and it's not for today, right? But I suppose that there's different ways in which you can look at these. So are you talking about formal education, and are you talking about like the likes of Accenture developing lots of different courses on AI for a very particular purpose, or are you talking about people engaging in learning experiences, right? So, and I like to think more about learning, and I like to think that technology is not something that you use to shoehorn the learning process, but rather that you need to be thinking, how can technology, in not a very invasive way, support people to engage in learning experiences that someone has designed to allow them to experience, right? So I'm just going to go back now a little, and I'm going to tell you a story about myself. So Fernando mentioned that I was a UNICEF advisor, right? So when I first arrived to Ireland and Trinity 24 years ago, I was doing work on mobile learning, and this was the big thing at the time, right? The mobile phones are going to revolutionize learning, and we're going to learn in a completely different way. And so the fight was all about trying to allow the phones into the classrooms, right? And the system was pushing back on these. No phones, they're all going to get distracted and whatever. So I started thinking, how can we use phones for learning? And I was thinking, this is very small. Of course, we didn't have the connection that we have nowadays. It was very expensive just to send a message and so forth. So I came up with this idea, what if I get people to create movies, right, with mobile phones? Everyone was doing that, of course, because now mobile phones could create videos, right? And everyone thought that every single young person everywhere in the world was going to become a film director, right? Little that they knew that all that they would know how to do was to point somewhere without any sense of what kind of a story they wanted to tell, being able to put a story together and so forth, right? So I devised this weird and very odd way of doing it. I had 3 teams. Actually, I had 4 teams. One team would only take pictures. One team would only take sound bites. And another team would only be able to put the sound and the images that they got from these other teams together. They had all developed the narrative and the story they wanted to tell together, and then they would go off and they would send back the bits of media. And of course, as you can imagine, the editor wouldn't know how to put the pieces together because people had gone off, and although they had agreed, they might have encountered something in the real world that would generate a different kind of a piece, and their thinking and their learning had moved on, but out of sync with everyone else in the team. And this was precisely what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to create a situation in which I made things difficult for them so that then they would have to talk, negotiate, discuss, and be able to put this narrative together, right? Which may not have been the initial narrative that they agreed at the time. And I was hoping that it wasn't going to be, because I was hoping if they go out in the context rather than being locked in a classroom, this should make a difference to them, right? So I was lucky enough to go to Ethiopia and do this experience with a bunch of really young and very motivated Africans from all over the African continent, right? And what I realized was that it was a really, really powerful tool to allow them to tell the story and to come together and to collaborate and to be creative. But I did not use the capabilities that the fund had in the way that people expected them to be used, because I was interested in the collaboration, the creativity, the learning, the context, and the social interaction, right? So this is just kind of to tell you how quirky my thinking about technology and learning is, right? So do I think generative AI is going to make a difference? No, I don't think it's going to make a difference, in the sense that I've been studying in the area for 24 years, right? The only significant piece of technology that I have seen has actually made its way into classrooms. It doesn't really matter whether they primary, secondary, or university are virtual learning environments, right? So a virtual learning environment is just like a management system, if you like, where now you can have someone online, and during COVID, it was really useful, right, to keep us all together. But that's about the only type of technology that has been able to settle like in a very robust manner in educational environments. Do I think technology has a very, very important role to play in learning and teaching? Of course I do, right? But I don't think learning and teaching can happen through the technology. I don't think learners can be shoehorned in technology, right? So if anything, right, I think we need to be careful about Gen AI, not because our students are going to copy or things like that, which everyone is paranoid about. If our students copy, actually I see these as a fault of the teacher. You need to set assessment that makes them think rather than being able to just lift everything from the internet, right? So really, we're not doing a good job if our students can copy because our assessment is not making them think, right? So if you have assessment that makes them think and work, there won't be any chance that they'll copy these from Gen AI or whatever, right? But I do worried about our students becoming less capable of thinking as they rely more and more on the tools that technology is giving us, right? So things that we find a lot now is I Google something and then they'll come and say, where did you get that from? Oh, I Googled it. And how did you know that's the right answer? No, Google told me, right? So they're not becoming critical. So I don't want to kind of go too much into it, but if it was me, right, I think I would radically rethink not the use that we're doing of technology now, but rather rethink whether we should be using technology at all, right, in educational settings. So if you think about Finland, which is meant to have one of the best educational systems in the world, Finland is coming back to the beginning again, right? So they went through a process in which everything was digital. They put all digital iPads and whatever in the classrooms and whatever. And it got to the point that children were not longer being taught how to handwrite. They were just typing, right? I think this is super dangerous because it's interfering with the natural development process, right? So as a human being, you develop, and there is development stages that you need to go through, right? I'm now doing research on motor development, right? Can children jump when they're meant to be jumping? Can they hop? Can they skip? And people think, how is that technology-enhanced learning research? And I said it was super important because I've developed a set of games where the children are just jumping, hopping, skipping, whatever. And ultimately, what I'm trying to understand is, are they developing at the right time? Because there is correlation between the development in your brain. If you hop and skip, there is a correlation with reading fluency. If you haven't been hopping and skipping, guess what? There is not a condition with you, but your development is delayed. If your development is delayed, when you go to school and you try and learn how to read, right, you're going to have difficulties that may end up then delaying you further, but there is nothing wrong with you. It's just that you haven't been moving around enough, right? So what I'm trying to say is I'm all for technology, right? And for instance, in the work that I'm trying to do, understanding screening children, I think AI can be super useful, right? So if I had a model that would really allow them to just, you have it in your home, they played the games, you have it at the back of the classroom, you have it in the occupational therapist place, right? And this is gathering historical data of the children. A lot of children would not end up with difficulties in school because someone will say, oh, they're delayed in hopping, get them to hop all the time, right? Or high hand coordination, right? This is linked to mathematical thinking. So what I'm trying to say is we need to be thinking, are we doing the right thing for learning, for development, throwing all this technology at children or young people when they may not be ready to deal with it, right? And for instance, in the case of young people, there is a lot of isolation and mental health issues related to social media, right? Social media algorithms are 100% addictive, right? So I'm not saying don't give them social media. I'm saying, are they ready to be exposed to that level of social media or whatever when they haven't probably developed the abilities, the skills, and the processes naturally, right? Because there's a natural development time. And then if they haven't, okay, and now we give them generative AI, what is the result of this going to be, right? So I think we need to rethink how we're using technology, and certainly as well how we will potentially use generative AI and what the over-reliance on generative AI may mean for younger generations. That's just us.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah. Too much trust is probably a risk. So if AI is not changing our learning so much, and it is not changing our democracy, Daniel, is changing our cities, the way we do have to organize cities or not? Please tell us your view on AI and urban design and what AI can do for smart cities to be more human, more livable.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. Well, I think these people deserve that we tell them a little bit about my city, about Zaragoza, which is your city also. It's the city where Professor in Rarity also taught for many years. So Zaragoza is a city which is roughly the same size as Dublin, a little bigger, I think, in his core, although with a smaller metropolitan area probably than Dublin. And if I were to choose a quality from Zaragoza, I would choose equality. Okay, Zaragoza is been upon several studies is the most equal city of more than 500,000 inhabitants in Spain, and one of the most equal cities of all the province capital cities in Spain, which is a good quality, because with not only because inequality is probably one of the acutest problems that we're facing as society, but because a more equal city leads to a safer city. It avoids economic risk, it avoids social risk, and ultimately it avoids democratic risk. So we can say that our role as urban technologists or as urban planners is to keep our city in this way, regardless the arrival of new technologies, in this case artificial intelligence. So how we do this? We are in the foundation. Our Zaragoza City of Knowledge Foundation has been a kind of agency that has been helping the city of Zaragoza to drive his digital agenda for about 20 years. The kind of things we do cover two different set of projects. One of the first books about smart cities that I read from Edward Glasser said that a smart city, and I want to talk about AI in the framework of the smart city, had to do two things: to use technology to make sure that trains arrive on time. Okay, so use technology for efficiency, to drive down costs, to improve quality of life. But that a good mayor also would be that mayor that prepares their citizens for the future, or I would say for the present, okay? Because AI is already with us. So it's not only about working on the engineering side of technology, but also working on the social and democratic impact, long-term. I say impact because I had prepared this before, but you know what I mean. So it means about education. It means taking care of how young generations perceive technology, but also how vulnerable communities perceive technology and how they are at risk with these things. So we do half of our projects on European projects about what we call smart city, understood as using technology for efficiency, and mostly they are funded through Horizon programs, and half of our projects deal with how we can use art to convey messages about opportunities and risks regarding technology. All of the projects that we're doing now involve AI, or how we can educate kids to grasp, for example, opportunities in filmmaking, or how they can identify fake news when they are into social media. So we do these kind of things. We were talking also about efficiency before, and I'm doing my speech as a kind of also dialogue already with the rest. And Professor Inerarity was talking about the unexpected. We don't want, for example, in the smart city projects, use AI, so the smart city becomes, like the Truman Show, okay? Like so every day is the same. I remember this song from David Byrne that says, "Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens, where your favorite song is playing all night long," right? So they said, it's the Spotify kind of city where, things converge to something that we all feel comfortable with, but there is little room for the unexpected. One of the most renowned urbanists, which is Jane Jacobs, whose shadow is becoming bigger and bigger, they say the blessed impracticalities of cities, and that comes way backwards with the idea of the flaneur, these guys that were wandering around the city, with nothing practical to do, just looking for the unexpected. So we shouldn't leave technology, build the perfect city, suburbia, where every day is the same. That's something that worries me also as a digital urban planner. So in terms of practical AI projects in the smart city arena, we do very, very small pilots. We do very small pilots in the city. In this case, for avoiding inequality, we have identified some divides. Of course, there is a big divide between large and medium cities. There is no medium cities as Zaragoza. They don't have the same kind of dialogue with big tech that a big city can have. But there is also a big divide between the public and the private. The skills, the technology, the knowledge of AI is now in the hands of private companies, which is not either good or bad. But we that live is a fact. But we that are on the public side need to try that this divide remains as close as possible, because if it widens, it's the citizens that are lagging behind this divide. So we need to keep up with our small tools and very rudimentary weapons. We need to keep up the pace with the big corporations in AI, and that presents cities with a number of challenges. One challenge is that actually in the IT departments of cities, there is no one coding AI. All the AI that cities are using, and most of the AI in cities are not provided by municipalities, are provided by Google, are provided by the transport company. But actually, the practical thing is that no one in IT departments in cities are programming AI. We don't have the skills, we don't have the time, we don't have the money. So there is a debate also how public service can incorporate skills to AI. I think there is a huge opportunity here also for collaboration between universities and municipalities. We've seen a great example here in Dublin, how Smart City Dublin is opening collaboration programs with a number of universities in Dublin, which I think it's the way forward. But of course, we need to rethink the problem of upskilling public service, reskilling public service, and the way that people are getting access to public service. In Spain, there's been 10 years with very little people incorporating into public service. There's been 10 years where, everyone went on retreat and there was no replacement. Now there is a huge number of open posts into public service, and they're not asking any AI skills, right? So that is not precisely lowering the gap, narrowing the gap, because we're hiring the people, the public servants now, that are going to lead innovation in cities for the next 20 to 30 years. So this is the kind of practical debates that I think that we need to be talking about when speaking about practical AI.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So, well, from now on, with all these ideas placed already on top of the table, we can. Do you want to make some? You were taking notes, Daniel, Noelle. So, do you want to answer something, or maybe? If not, I can put some idea on the table that maybe for all of you to start debating. Yeah. So AI is there for it is going to be with us as a permeating technology. Whatever we do, we will use AI-enabled things, and probably it's not going to be like bad or nightmare scientific sci-fi movie. This is not going to be Armageddon, but however, there are some problems which are linked to AI, and I put a couple of them. So let's say footprint, so carbon footprint. So the energy consumption due to AI is very large, and we have to do maybe something about on the technology side and on the social responsibility side about that. Also, privacy issues are, even if democracy is not going to be overtaken, there are problems with our privacy that and our liberty in some way that have to be also taken into account from the city point, for the urban planning, from the education and in the schools. And I mean, what do you let's start from this
On the industry side, yeah.
Energy side.
Oh, it's a good topic. So I guess one of the big things, and I suppose I can speak from an Irish perspective at least like that. So when we look at it here, and we have a huge amount of the data centres that have been here, and that drove on the SaaS revolution in Ireland. And so having key infrastructure is really important as you move on a digital economy, right? So that's a very important thing to have in the context like that. And then when we look at the Irish context too, one of the big things we're looking at is twofold. So we think about the context of wind energy. And so when we look at Ireland, obviously we're an island nation. There is huge opportunities for wind energy right across the country, from the west coast along the southeast and so on. Also, we have wave energy, which to some degrees is kind of looking there. But one of the things that is projected is that Ireland will have excess energy by 2030, assuming that all the wind energy comes online. And then if you're bringing that together with companies who are going to, make more energy efficient data centers, AI will get more efficient over time. I mean, if we look at technology, that's one thing we can say, is that over time technology tends to get more efficient as it goes on. Like it's kind of a driven kind of approach that it goes. So new technology comes out, it goes through that iteration, it gets more efficient, it goes down. And that's driven usually by market factors, which is cost, which is usually there, which drives efficiencies. And I think too, we're going to start seeing one of the big things, it was the large language models, and there was initially thought everybody would have a large language model. And I think now we're starting to see that there'll be a few probably large language models that takes huge energy for training, and then we start seeing a lot more smaller language models which are run more local, more at the edge, more devices like that. They'll consume a lot less power. And I think as that paradigm shift starts happening, we're going to be able to get an infusion of where the technology will be able to run locally at very efficient rates like that. And also then at the hyperscale scenario, you will have renewable energy coming on board. So like we're seeing in countries such as in Spain with through solar is a huge advantage. We're seeing other countries starting to look at nuclear in the US and in other countries. We're also seeing a huge energy on solar in the Middle East again like that. So countries are looking around what they can do with renewable energy, because the reality is going forward is we're always going to have data. Data is going to continue to grow, and if you have more data, you have to have somewhere to store it. And if you have somewhere to store it, that's going to need power. So there's no denying that. And as we move into a further, more connected world, that's just going to grow. So I think really the big opportunities now is being very clever in leveraging renewable energy, looking at where you can maximize that energy coming out from it, and then really use that then to offset then the challenges such as AI, which does consume vast energies. And there's, the facts speak for themselves on that side. And like Microsoft, and they've talked about and Google, their energy consumption has risen over the last number of years, and that's predominantly by AI, and they've been very public around that. We've seen that. So for me, I think the really exciting opportunity is using renewable energies at scale and getting to that point. So we've done and the other side that we've looked at too in Ireland is very much around the whole idea of green hydrogen. So as you take again the idea of having huge amount of wind energy, being able then to convert that into green hydrogen, that green hydrogen then can be used then to, when the wind isn't there or the solar isn't there, you've got a backup that's there replace of it. That's a clean supply of fuel that's in there. So that really is the potential for where it can go. And that's going to involve new technologies, new research, engineering, all aspects that will come in. And what one would hope, and I suppose I'm always a positive type optimist in that view, is that I think when you see that, and the technologies to AI will have probably a role in that, in helping to optimize some design principles that will come in. It'll aid engineers. It's already been used in AI chip design, for example, and so NVIDIA has talked about that publicly. We're starting to see this come in. So if you think about it, AI will be this tool that will help engineers be able to come up with more creative solutions. It'll be able to model more complex things such as weather patterns and that. So you could see that then optimizing then the power on grids. So personally, I think it's a really exciting time, and I know there's initial concern, yes, in the short term, but I think when we look at in the short to medium term, I think there's a huge potential there that could radically change the way we do energy. particularly in Europe. And I think too, we look at the connections within this, and the European grid is a really good example of this, where you'll be able to move your electricity around Europe from different times and different paths where that happens. So there's a really exciting time, I think, in Europe now to leverage the renewable energy, to drive that, and then use that to drive the future tech that's coming down the road. So that's from that perspective there.
Yeah, let's.
Just on that, so I'm already seeing, and it's probably driven from the cost perspective. So I'm already seeing people thinking about how to minimize energy consumption. As I said, it's probably from a cost perspective, but there's definitely things you can do in terms of, as somebody had a joke that, Gen AI is the answer. Now, what was the question? So, it's not necessarily the best solution. So one of the things, we do with clients is kind of really challenge ourselves to see, is there kind of maybe potentially like a not necessarily Gen AI answer to the problem. Is there kind of a simpler way that things might be solved? You can there's definitely things you can do, as you were saying, John, to optimize. So say, for example, we were looking at one particular business problem, and we realized that if you got the accuracy of the model to approximately like 80 to 85%, that was sufficient to solve the problem. And you didn't actually have to keep training the model, which, up to 90 plus, where you're starting to consume more and more and more energy to do that. We're also seeing people starting to scale back, the models to get them more narrow, focused on specific tasks, which in itself is more energy efficient. We're also seeing it being applied in capital projects, actually, to help deliver capital projects faster, and a lot of those capital projects are actually ones that are enabling the transition to net zero. And also I was reading an article in Utility Week where one of the CIOs of a European system operator was saying that from their perspective, like, net zero can't happen without interconnected data, because the grids are becoming so complex with kind of micro generation, many, many more diverse sources of energy. And that really, in order to facilitate that and enable, kind of the dynamic operation of the grid, there just has to be data. So yeah, so I completely agree.
Daniel,
Oh, sorry.
No.
No. Okay. So I know that I sounded like I'm against technology, right? Which I'm not at all, right? So I just, on foot of the sustainability and the energy consumption of data centers and so forth. So Trinity is really concerned about all our students being conscious about sustainability and so forth, right? And I, for one, for a long time, I teach software engineering, right? And I see my students who develop all of these projects that are energy hungry all the time, right? And they just do it because they can do it, because they have it, and so forth, right? So one of the things that we're really conscious about now is make them aware that although they may be able to do it, right, that they may need to be thinking about the amount of energy being used and so forth. So Trinity has developed a module that is all around sustainability, right? And it's a module that the intention would be is compulsory for absolutely every single student in the university, regardless of the degree that you're doing, right? So that module is now being pioneered by the School of Business, and this year every single student in the School of Business will be taking that module. I'm taking that module as a lecturer so that then I can bring it back to my school, because they're doing the pilot with the students, but they're also giving the module to lecturers, right? And I see how, although Gen AI, I think, is not going to make a huge difference in the way we teach things, it is going to be doing many other things around thinking about what we teach and how we teach it and what we do and how we do it, right? So in that sense, the mere fact that it's here, that is consuming energy, that is whatever, will have to make us think, oh, you're a software engineer, you can do that way, but you can do it in this other way, right? And so it will trigger learning, right? Although it may not necessarily have to be a Gen AI tool or environment or something where you put the students in and you shoehorn them this end and they come out the other end smarter, right? But of course, it is going to do things, and it is already doing things for learners, right? Daniel?
Well, I am convinced that digital technologies and artificial intelligence is not going to overcome democracy. For that to happen, it is enough to the analog means. We can do it with analog means. We don't need digital ones. But it doesn't mean that it is not a. It is going to pose very deep problems and challenge our political system. Allow me to quote Norbert Wiener, one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence, once said, the world of the future will be an ever more demanding struggle against the limitation of our intelligence. An ever more demanding struggle against the limitation of our intelligence. Not a comfortable hammock in which we can lie down to be waited upon by our robot slaves. This is the war we are facing. We have to deal with. And I say this because people fearing the threats of artificial intelligence and people expecting the final solution to all the problems thanks to artificial intelligence share the idea that machines and humans are making the same thing, and we are thinking in the same way. And this is not so. Really, if we examine the way machines think, or humans think, machines make decisions, and humans make decisions, we realize that it is about two very different systems of thinking and making decisions. Artificial intelligence is not a replacement, fortunately or unfortunately, of our work, of our democracy, but ever more demanding struggle against the limitation of our intelligence and political intelligence and social or collective intelligence. What can we do? I would say, first, ask ourselves, what can machines do instead of us and better than us? Second, let's concentrate ourselves in what we do best than them. Third, what must we do with those humans whose previous task will be done by machines? This is the idea of a fair transition. And finally, let's shape the optimal ecosystems, human-machines ecosystems, for the new division of labor. And at the end of the day, the core of the distinction between humans and machines, while thinking or making decisions, is that the machines are best when it comes up to many data, or when we need many data, or we have our disposal many data, when there is certainty, continuity, a clear definition of the problem, the distinction, the input and the output are also clear, when we humans are better than machines. Just the other way around, when there are scarcity of data, ambiguity, uncertainty, when we have to take decisions related to was called wild problems. The wild problems, when even the definition of the problem is not clear, humans are better than machines. When the definition of the problem is clear, machines usually are better than us.
Yeah, I like to pick up the debate where you where Fernando put it in terms of the ecological footprint and of AI. Well, look, cities were embarked in a race towards climate neutrality. Our city is one of the 100 cities in Europe that want to become climate neutral by 2030. Okay, and we're doing really big efforts, as every city is doing, to achieve that. We are imposing low emission zones, and many people are not happy with that, and politicians in the city or public servants are dealing with these problems, you know, enforcing regulations so people cannot park in certain streets. We're enforcing green regulations for procurement. We're doing our efforts to be climate neutral, and roughly we are on the right path. The same thing was happening for you know, big corporations like Microsoft or Google. I was seeing yesterday some charts where they had planned in 2020 to be climate neutral for 2030. Okay, so they had set this plan to lower their emissions until in 2030 they had virtually zero neutrality, zero emissions. But actually, they published on their own data. They published the actual emissions, and they're ramping like that. Okay. So the difference is AI, right? The difference is AI. There are many data centers that are being installed in the surroundings of what we call in Spain the empty Spain, you know, because we have wind, we have sun, there's little people, so we're embracing these data centers, which is good, but you know, in practical terms, it's going to demand a huge amount of energy. They're going to generate emissions. And I think there is not a totally fair game here, right? Because cities are making a big effort in becoming neutral, but I get the feeling that we're not counting on the emissions of AI in this sense. We're using AI to become climate neutral, and at the same time, so there are kind of two AIs. Yeah. Our little AI that we're using, for example, I'm dealing with projects to optimize last mile logistics, so people, lorries from different postal carriers can share vehicles, can optimize routes. We're using AI for that. But there is this big AI, okay, way beyond, which is in a total different scale that is ever and ever more consuming. So this has created a kind of not entirely fair game between corporations. And I think there is something in terms of governance that is not actually working very smoothly here, because, you know, we have like different rules in this game towards climate neutrality. I think also that we need to think about the problem of the market labor. Okay, I'm assuming, because AI works, I mean, this AI that was designed to think, to replicate how humans think, this was leading nowhere. This path was abandoned many years ago, and they started the brute force way, which is, you know, highly intensive computing to get much better results than a human mind could achieve. And we've been outperformed in chess, in Go. We're being outperformed in many tasks that involve, you know, complex calculations. Now, some people get the feeling, for example, that we are being educated for jobs that AI is doing much better than us, right? Some people get the feeling. And there, you know, between the three things that a human can do in labor, you know, cognitive tasks, empathic tasks or manual tasks. Maybe the education system is much focusing, in cognitive tasks, which AI, if not now, within 10 years, they will do much better than us, okay? It was the former leader of Google that gave a talk 2 weeks ago and said, if I was a student, I would study for plumber, okay? But maybe there are values, there are things in education that we could teach or we could put the focus on, like social care, like things related to, taking care of people, that we're not actually putting a lot of focus now. So maybe there is a long-term thinking also of how we can change education to give more value to the tasks that AI will have more time in excelling to outperform citizens. I think there is also a need to change the tax system in the States, okay? Because workers are taxed for working. And when a corporation replaces a worker for a robot, this robot is not taxed in the same way. So how are we going to pay for the welfare state if this continues to happen? This is called task encroachment. So there are going to be more. Jobs are not going to be replaced next morning, next day. It will be more and more tasks that will be where AI or where machines will be able to outperform humans. And from an economic point of view, it will make sense to be, to have this replacement. So we need to rethink also our welfare state and how we fund and how we get taxes and how we redistribute them, so we keep what I said before, our societies together.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, do you agree with
No.
the other Daniel?
I disagree with the idea that in the cognitive tasks can be better implemented by machines than by humans. I would say only a remark. Perhaps a certain part of cognitive task can be better implemented by machines, but a certain part of these cognitive tasks can be better implemented by humans. The most creative, in the radical sense, the kind of problems I have just defined more or less as wild problems. This part of the cognitive task is to go in. Is better implemented made by humans than machines.
Sorry, John. So I would agree as well that machines can't outperform people. So, for instance, a lot of AI right now, it's about prompting, so you're going to get out, what you get out is as good as the question that you put in, right? So if you're not good at asking questions, if you don't understand the context, if you don't know what you're looking for, what you get out is pretty poor. It's rubbish, right? So what I see happening with our students is they will go off and they'll do the final year project. This is a big piece of work that they have to do and whatever. A week later, they're back with all the code developed. You were very productive, right? So can you explain to me, how did you do that and whatever? It's all, Copilot, ChatGPT, Gen AI, and so forth, right? And the real worrying thing for me is that if they start believing that they can offload difficult work, like learning is difficult and there's no getting out of this, like this illusion that we're all going to be learning in a very easy and painful manner is not true, right? Anything, if any of you can think of stuff that you learned in life, the things that you learned and that you really remember and whatever, were out of a process of hardship, not understanding, breaking your brain to try and understand, trying to work it out. And maybe you were studying for a long time, but the penny didn't drop, but then something happened. You saw something, you talked to someone, and then all of these bits and pieces that you were doing came together, right? And then, well, it is something that it happens in your brain. So my fear is that if our students start thinking that they can offload that process, because it's hard and it's difficult, on machines and Gen AI, we're going to end up with people not capable of thinking. And then is when we're really going to have a problem. So for me, in a way, Daniela, I kind of agree with you in the sense that education can't be only about content, okay? Content, you get content anywhere. So we need to rethink the education system in terms of making it task-oriented, problem-solving, and really things that make people think hard and work very hard to learn the things that they learn, right? Not so much because of what they end up learning, but because of the skills they pick up in the process of doing that, right? So if our students start thinking, fantastic, I'm going to get my degree because I'm going to throw everything at Gen AI and I'm going to get it out. And this is the kind of graduates that we are putting, we are going to have a huge difficulty going forward, right? So this is why I'm saying I'm against the technology in the sense that we need to make them remove the technology from them, right? So that they do the hard work and they acquire the skills. I see people talking about Gen AI, lots of really smart people, but I'm not looking here just at the panel or the people here. I myself didn't grow up with technology, right? When I went to school, I used to have a pen, pencil, notebook, and the ways in which I learned were quite traditional, right? So I'm coming to all of these already with a set of abilities and skills that I acquired, not using technology, but doing traditional learning, right? We need to now be thinking, what happens with the students that don't go through that? Will they pick up the same skills? Will they have the same abilities, right? And it's not only about content, it's about everything else that is not content related. It's the learning, which is not the content, right? So, sorry.
Okay. I'd kind of be somewhere in the middle, and no surprise there. So as an Irish person, we just don't like conflict, so somewhere have to be kind of balance. But I suppose, like for me, I would see that the AI will very much be a tool for people to use, and I like, as somebody who uses AI, and I see kind of some of the direction where things are going and looking across all sectors. So like if you look at medicine, for example, a huge potential there. Like if you look at, say, breast cancer, we've already seen AI that has been as good or as better than some top consultants that's in that area. And just think about the power that brings then to, now that you can bring that in and do, like you can look at hundreds of images, thousands of images, and where one consultant wouldn't be able to do that on their own. And we all know there's a shortage of skills in every industry. The other piece too that we're seeing as a trend globally is obviously we have an aging population. So like there is this case where we're going to have to use technology to help us to do things better and smarter, you know, and I think where I see AI is that opportunity coming in as being a really valuable tool that will help people that's there. We're going to have limited resources, limited specialists, so you're going to need these tools to help to do that, and that's going to be a challenge. And I like the Japanese model. I think that's like the way that they look at technology, like they they give it like, I wouldn't say like a cartoonish way, but you know, it's not a Terminator style. It's seen as something that's there as a tool, that's there as friendly, and that also makes it more acceptable into society. And I think that's really interesting. As we think about AI and how do we make it work with us, it should be seen as a tool. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I give you a really good example. I saw this. I was at a hacking conference there just a few weeks ago. And there was this individual hacker who was in there, and he's an ethical hacker, by the way. So, and he's a lecturer, so he's all good. But he talked about the idea that I asked him, said, "Well, do you use AI?" And he goes, "Well, I don't really use AI." And then he thought about it. He goes, "Actually, no, I do." And so what he did was he took an AI model and he trained it on all of his knowledge of how he uses to hack, and so he then used that. When he was going into competitions, he would use that as a tool, and he'd have a conversation with it. As he said, it's like my tutor, because he goes, it's able, I say, this is the device I want to hack, these are some of the properties around it, and it goes and says, okay, well, these are probably based on your previous experience, this is how you should probably attack it to start with. And then he used that as a basis for going through it. And he said, you know, he'd have to do that anyways, but this time the AI was a tool that helped him to guide it, and it gave him some suggestions based on all of his previous experience that it had. And then he was able then to say, okay, and this is where it comes to this critical thinking piece. So he didn't just accept what it told him. So he actually looked at it and said, okay, that sounds reasonable. No, that's not. That's completely crazy. That won't work. So he was able to leverage his experience, but also the tool as a guide to help him do it. But the critical thing there came into this idea of critical thinking. And I think when we look at democracies and we look at where that's going, like that's going to be a really big part in that. The tool can be really powerful. So I think in Taiwan, they have an AI system where you can, like, so the whole society inputs into it. I think it's called V, if I remember right, something like that. And so basically it allows the whole society to input into, like, collectively a question, and people all feed into that. Now you think about if you had millions of people all feeding into that, a human can't look at that and summarize it, but an AI can do that in overnight, right? And then you feed that then to policy people, and they look at that and go, okay, these are key things, very useful for a politician to help them understand, like, okay, how is the dynamics changing? What is important for people? And then you can also find outliers. So as somebody who works in AI, outliers I love, right? Those fringe cases. But those fringe cases can spark, you know, movements, and we saw that with the Me Too movement that we mentioned earlier on. So there's opportunities for politicians, I think, if they're really clever, that they can start using AI to find, like, outlier problems that are coming through, and how to use that then and be creative and to address some of the societal changes that are coming up, or some of the fears. And so I think there's a lot of potential there, and it's been able to look globally at what we have and bring that together. But I would definitely say that AI is more of a tool that will help us enhance human knowledge, enhance human ability, and it will go on that direction over time. And as a part-time sheep farmer as well, I also find use then that drones are quite handy for just checking around in fields and things like that too.
Thank you. Yeah, no, please.
So I was actually talking to John just before the event, and I was just saying that we had a talk from a lady who's the CEO of Akara Robotics, that is a robotics company that does robots for cleaning of hospitals. And she said something that really stuck with me. She said we should be using AI and automation and robotics for the 3 Ds. So jobs that are dull, jobs that are dangerous, and jobs that are dirty. And that's what we should be focusing on. And the other thing that struck me, and it was based on what a number of people have said, and what you said at the start, Fernando, and also Danielle said, you know, these models are trained on historical data. So in effect, they are driving by looking at the rearview mirror. And say, for example, the thought of making the jump between a neuron, how your brain works, and a neuron in your brain, and trying to apply that to solve a problem from you know, a computational kind of and computer science perspective. I'm not sure that this technology, because you know, I would struggle to see those kind of breakthroughs. I think you need humans for those breakthroughs, because if it's novel and it's new and it's a different way of looking at things, if it's not in the historical bank, the model is not going to necessarily be able to make that leap, you know, and join those topics together. So I do think there is still, like what you're saying, John, I think there's still scope to use it as a tool, but to control its usage, to make sure it's kind of controlled and governed correctly to our advantage rather than to as a threat.
Yeah, thank you. There is something I was really surprised by. I mean, when we think about how Google Mind, I think it's called. Excuse me. Yeah, the machine, Google DeepMind. Yeah, DeepMind. The machine that started winning Go, and then winning chess, and then, I think we are relatively prone to say, okay, well, a machine wins a game and the other game, then that the same machine solved the one of the scientific problems of the century that had been really looked after by hundreds of scientists, biochemists, physicists, computer science people looking for the protein folder problem and doing the best physics, the best biochemistry we were able to do, and for 20 years the problem was really unsolved. And our human model making way to solve scientific problems was not working at all. And then this DeepMind really apparently solves more than 90%, 95%, 98% of the protein structures correctly. I mean, already for that, AI has given a giant step forward on human knowledge. And it's true that we do not understand fully how it does. It's deep learning in the sense that is kind of a black box. We don't know exactly how it makes this pattern recognizing solution. But I mean, we have to acknowledge, Daniel, I would say that the machine is able to do things we have been really looking very, very stubbornly to solve, and we haven't. So it's probably it was one kind of problems that you mentioned before. Is well defined. The input and the output is clear. So you have these amino acids one after the other. Then what is the structure? So the problem is very easily stated, but our models did not work, and we know pretty well about quantum chemistry and so on. But the protein has been elusive for a couple of decades, and the machine really solved it. And the people in Google DeepMind, they got the Nobel Chemistry just months ago for this. You see. So I tend to agree with you, but let's also be humble in some sense that this machine is quite clever in its own way also. Okay.
Do you know who is the best player of chess right now in the world? A human or a machine?
I would say the machine wins.
A team of humans and machines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A team is the best player right now.
Okay, Daniel? Thank you. I wonder if our audience has some question, and yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you for, no, it's okay. Hello. So thank you, first of all, for your time and your knowledge. It's really, really, really interesting. So I've been discussing with my colleagues. I work here in CRM, technology, etc., and we deal with a lot of people in sales and programming, and we see a lot of AI everywhere. And we keep seeing this issue with, as you mentioned, jobs that are dull, dirty, and dangerous will probably be removed. So my question goes along the lines like, that removal is going to be way, way faster than any other technology that we've ever had. So my first question is, how are we going to manage that so that that bunch of people, which incidentally, it's probably going to be the white-collar workers, not the blue-collar workers. So there's big incentive not to remove them. That's another question. And the other question that I had is, those jobs that are going to be removed, someone will stay to supervise what the model is doing. So that person usually will have like probably more experience in order to have better correlations with things that are going, as you mentioned also. So how do I create then the next generation of people that will supply that moderation to the model, that are going to be young, and how do I train them to have that experience that they won't be able to have because their job doesn't exist anymore? So there you go. Thanks.
So, yeah, Noelle, please. Noelle, maybe.
So there's a lot of parts of the question. One part, I suppose, is, so we were at one example. It's not just kind of cleaners in hospitals. An example of, say, like a white collar is, I was speaking to somebody who does a lot of work with customer service organizations. So as you can imagine, it's already being a big impact there. And as you said, I think we were talking about how we've both worked in organizations where in order to quality assure the customer service calls, we've seen kind of a practice where you have humans sitting in and listening on calls and having a checklist and observing everything. And I suppose kind of we believe that, I suppose, first of all, with the models, you'll get a better outcome, because at the moment, by doing that, you're only getting a sample of the actual calls, whereas you could use AI to actually kind of have a complete coverage in an automated fashion and do the checklists. But we were saying that person listening into the calls, definitely their job will change, because no longer are they kind of sitting and listening to calls, but like what they'll be doing then is they'll be monitoring the overall performance. They'll be doing things like identifying areas, say for example, where training is needed because there's one particular GDPR question that everybody is having an issue with. So definitely the nature of their job changes. And I think there's actually going to be two types of role. Like one is a moderation from a functional perspective, and then the second one is like moderation from a technical perspective. So you're still going to have need somebody to be able to curate what the AI is doing from a functional perspective, to understand this is what the customer service agent should be saying, this is what they should not be saying, this is the type of product explanation they should be giving. And then you're also going to obviously have new roles in terms of kind of the management of the models themselves and technically managing them. At the moment, I think there are enough people who have that functional expertise from history to be able to do to be able to make that change to the functional, kind of moderator role. I don't have an answer actually for the in 20 years time, you're still going to need somebody who has enough functional knowledge to be able to moderate the model, but actually they won't have been a customer service agent answering the phones, or maybe they will, and maybe they'll be kind of the very, kind of highly prize jobs, or maybe it's that they'll do that but it'll be in an accelerated fashion and then they move on to the moderation jobs. So I think that part still has to be, it still has to be figured out. I certainly don't have the answer today.
Just one thing I've seen, and I was involved a few years ago in this kind of expert AI skills group in Ireland, and we were kind of looking at future skills and what that need would be. And it was interesting, like a lot of the debate that we had was around this idea, is like, as the things will change and AI will change and the topics will change, the skills will change. But one of the things that came up consistently was this idea of that critical thinking. And regardless of what way you do technology, so good analogy that was often given was, if you think back to the first the spreadsheets when they first came out, it was viewed that the world would no longer need accountants. And I would argue we probably have more accountants now than we've ever had before in the world, right? So there's always a perception around that technology will radically change, and it does. But fundamentally, kind of as you talked about there, like people need people, and I think regardless of what will happen, that piece, that requirement. The skills piece is going to be that challenge, is about understanding those future skills, about how this emerging technology comes. And I think discussions like this and others that are happening are really important, because we don't know. I think that there's an evolving piece that goes in that. But the one consistent thing that has come up, and the research I've seen and just even discussions in that, is this idea of being able to think about something and look at it critically to understand it. And that goes back to the previous, what you were talking about earlier. That understanding is hard and it's not easy to do, but it's also not a defined problem. And going back to this idea, like AI is really good when you tell it what's there. But when uncertainty comes up, that is trickier for it to do that. Or it'll give you an answer. We all know about hallucinations. We've all seen them. Like, and so that critical thinking comes in a big piece of it. But the one piece I would have a worry about, and this came up through the critical skills working group we were doing, was like teachers were saying, it's all great saying that we have to teach these skills, but we don't know these skills. So how do we do this? And you kind of touched on it there, that a lot of the skills aren't in the public sector. And so I think there's an onus for us to really evaluate the public sector, and how do we start bringing skills in, because like teachers would be really important for this idea of doing it. Industry and the policy and decision makers, if you're going to make decisions on future taxes, you're going to make decisions on education, you're going to make decisions on, like, there will have to be understanding of AI to some degree in most public sector roles. And I think that's going to be, to me, is one of the big challenges. How do we bring that in? Because public sectors form policy and policy forms regulation. And if you do the wrong regulation, it can have an awful lot, and a very negative impact on jobs and on society and on business. And I think that's going to be a challenge. And I don't know, that one I think is probably, to me, is one of the bigger risks, is will the public services across all countries be able to bring in some expertise to help them to learn that? And that, to me, would be one of the big challenges. I don't know what other people think. So not quite answering it, but it's based around it. Like.
Any other question? Yeah, please.
What an excellent evening. Thank you. What an excellent panel. And there are so many questions, like where do we start? Because there are so many things that like John just said, we do not know. We don't know what the future. We know that AI is not going away. That we have to take for granted. We take for granted that is here to stay. And as you've been saying, what is the best way to use it? But there are concerns that come with new issues. And the topic that I understood was supposed to also have democracy involved. And the only one that I saw speaking of that was Daniel talking about, if I understood you correctly, Daniel, we were talking about, you mentioned a global responsibility. You mentioned a social injustice. And it's not that it's done on purpose. But what will be the outcome of those that are not privy to this information, to this knowledge? And those who, they're going to be very easily swayed by fake news. We saw that.
who understands what happened in the US? Who understands that? Well, people that listen to fake news, that don't think for themselves. And the first question that I wrote down when Fernando was speaking was, how much information can the human brain handle? AI is like minimum 100 brains thinking. Most people can. My wife is brilliant. And I often tell her, you have to talk people to other people the way that you need to talk to me. You have to tell it to me 3 times. And then maybe I'll understand it. She gets things the first time. I don't. Most people don't. I believe that most people are like myself. And when you, with all the things that are the problems that we're seeing on here, the social responsibility, that's what I said, the democracy for everybody else, because if not, we're going to create a big problem globally and locally. The jobs, the dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs, they need to be remunerated better. They need to be just compensated for those type of jobs. The jobs that require cognitive intelligence, we don't respect those jobs usually. Or the nurse, the person that handles the phone calls, they are the low scale. And the skills that we think very highly of, many of the skills are going to be taken by AI. Even our thinking now, the AI is used, okay, give me a report on this, how would I answer this? The AI has an answer, may not be the right answer, and it takes a human being to say, is it the right answer? Can I change it to make it better? So we need to get advantage of this. So my question is, because that's what it should be, right? A question. And the question was, are we being taught to think properly? So that was really my question. Are we capable? How do I identify fake news? That's not the answer. How much information can the brain handle? And are we being taught?
It's my question.
Sorry.
So I do think that a lot of the work that, so I work at higher education, right? And a lot of what we try to do is always to ask questions rather than give answers, right? So our job is always, and this sends the students bananas. They come to you because they want an answer, because they don't want to think. And we very much see our jobs as asking questions that would lead you to the answer. And we will guide you there, but we're not giving you the answer. But students more and more are pushing back on this idea, right? So it's increasingly more difficult to find students that accept the challenge of having to find out things by themselves. So in my teaching, I teach these modules that are software engineering projects that students do with companies, right? And then, so they love them because they're hands-on and the real life problems, and they really give them an opportunity to do all the difficult things that they don't want to do when you tell them to do them, because they're trying to solve the problem that they're interested in, and they're doing it with the company, and they feel that they're empowered and so forth. And anyway, so at the end of the module, we do a competition, right? So we have normally we have 35 teams, 10 teams end up in the final, and then we get a panel of industry people to come and judge the projects, right? And what they do is that they have to present and whatever. So one of the of the judges said, okay, that it is really difficult to find the really bright student, right? That all the students are more or less the same, but to find that person that is hugely bright, okay, and makes the difference between everyone else and yourselves is really difficult. So he said that the projects were a brilliant way of doing that. In my experience with the students that are involved in more activities that are not only learning, kind of, I go to college, right? So the winning team last year, they had someone who played the violin and, you know, really was engaged in doing that, but also in this project and whatever, people that are very excellent in sport. So people who do very challenging things, right, are the A players, because they will apply that same idea of the challenge, the trying to be better, the agency to everything that they do, right? Sorry, I'm really conscious of time.
There is a question over there, and then there is the last one, and we have to stop.
Sí. No, y aparte el edificio.
Because I think the person will be capable to answer that. Can you hear me? Yeah. So this for the Directora from Zaragoza, most equal city, something to aspire to. What really interests me is that when you were mentioning about using the research in AI to identify fake news in social media, so you mentioned that work is done with help of Horizon, so that's public. Is there already some research available where you can start reading and be at the cusp of where that's going? Because I think that kind of plays hand in hand, living in an inclusive, equal city, and making sure that it stays that way. Thank you.
That particular project doesn't belong to Horizon. It's a creative culture project. It's called Fair Media, with AI in capital letters, of course, and it runs a series of workshops with students and teachers and journalists to work together to help them identify and deal and navigate social networks in this era of disinformation and fake news.
Is it then already somewhere available where we can actually see that, summarize and understand?
Yeah. We've produced some results. There are some what do you call them, online lessons which are being produced. So you look for Fair Media, and you will find something. Yeah. And I like to say something about education too. Well, I think one of the ways AI could change education and the labor market too, because they're very related, is that education tends to happen mostly at the beginning of life, and probably that the when will have to shift a little bit. So we need to re-educate ourselves during our lifespan a little bit, because otherwise we cannot do the reskilling or upskilling that we need to do. I don't say that it's going to give us complete hope that we're not out of the market. I do think that we are going to be out of the labor market. And actually, there is a very shocking statistics about how people with university degrees from the beginning of the century until the year 2000 did more cognitive related work, and from the year 2000 to now they're doing less cognitive intensive work. So that's something that goes with your impression that white collars are not free of risk. And another thing that needs to happen probably in the labor market is that retirement happens at the end of your life. We are working less hours than ever. SMI is going up, so you might think that this comes from somewhere. Somebody's paying, that we're working less, and this is the productivity effect probably of automation. You will be seeing the week of 4 working days. You will be seeing more paternal permits, you will be seeing more holidays, you will be seeing more sabbatic during your lifespan. And little by little, we will be turning from the age of labor to the age of leisure. And of course, we will need also to learn how to make a proper use of our extended leisure in our lifespan. So that's probably gives for another debate.
Hopefully, yeah, that sounds
Because
great. Okay,
what was
so
this
we
about?
we are really running out of time, and so I only want to thank you all, our excellent panel. Thank you very much to all of you for coming to share with us your knowledge. Thank you to all of you for coming, and I hope enjoying this debate, this Cajal encounter on AI, education, society, and democracy. On behalf of the Embassy of Spain to Ireland, thank you for coming, and I think we close here, and next year more. Thank you very much.